Hello and welcome to lesson 2 of week 29. In this lesson, we are going to tidy up the structure of the project. I'm in preparation to end the project. My name is Mildred. In the last lesson, we looked at how to create our user profile and also how to create a client profile. We have our page and we did the login register system where we can log in to a client profile. Now, why we did not create a client, we created a user, and I will log in with that user and let's see what the home page looks like. So on successful login, it welcomes us to the home page. Now ignore the design. This is not a front-end course. We just need something to be able to test what we're doing at the back end. There are two forms. One of the form will help us to create a new client, and then another form will help us retrieve an existing client. Now I have a client in the database and a client profile with a unique ID, client 123, and I'll try to retrieve that profile. Once you successfully retrieve the profile, in the last lesson we see that we had all of the forms on the navigation. I have cleaned this up to change it so that we retrieve the information that we entered when we created, so that we can easily update that information anytime we need to update the personal profile. We can have the chlamydia and gonorrhea form, which will display here when we create the form, the hepatitis B reporting form here, and the congenital syphilis form that I already created and is in this tab. So we are using tabs, and the reason I'm using this tab is so that we can have all of the patient records on the page once we retrieve the information. So because of this new structure, what we need to do now is to change how we create a client, which means that I'm going to drop the tables and recreate a new client. Now let's look at what we have here for the tables. We have a client profile table. We have a client screening STI, client treatment STI, congenital syphilis for mothers, for the infants, and hepatitis B mothers. And then we have the partner management table. Now let's look at the models file. For this lesson, and to make things a little faster, I have created the model for the entire project, and what I did here was to look through the forms, the three forms that we have. There are some fields that are similar or that repeat themselves across forms, and since we want to have a tab control where when you retrieve the client information, you have all of the information they have on the system populated across all the tabs from all the different forms. When we look at the chlamydia and gonorrhea reporting form, we have patient information that takes name, address, date of birth, gender, phone numbers. These are consistent across the three forms, and so we don't need to repeat them on each form. When we have the client profile that takes all the demographic information and personal information, it covers all of these, and so the forms that we are using can now be edited to take away common fields from the form and create one table with that common field that can be populated across all the other forms, and so that we don't have repetition of data, to keep data integrity. Now, this is not a production level way of designing things, but you have to start like this for you to be able to understand complex engineering specifications. What will happen in real world situation is that you'll be given a specification like this. You're going to be creating an infectious disease tracking, maybe a pregnant woman or congenital syphilis and hepatitis tracking. The forms do not contain all the information that you need. You need to be able to reason logically to be able to get the project done. Things like creating the authentication system is not part of the forms. Things like trying to make sure you keep to the ACID properties. Things like trying to look at things like if we have partner management, so we have to have a general system where the general population is registered, and a particular part where we register exposed infants, not just register them under the mother like the form says. And so we have a course 3, which follows immediately after this course, that gives you all of the production level complexities that you need to handle before you can develop your software for production or to be ready to put on the internet for use. When we create our models, we need to have a default value for the fields, or make it optional, such that when we do not insert values into those fields, the system do not show an error. So for the purpose of this, we are not looking at what fields are optional and what fields are compulsory. What I'm trying to do here is to just show you how you can create your model, and then look at the model and edit your form so that your form fields have values for all of these fields that you need to insert into the database. I have changed the model before this lesson to be able to allow optional or default values, because we are going to delete the tables and we are going to recreate them so that once a client profile is created, automatically it inserts records into the client screening STI, the client treatment STI, the partner management STI, the congenital syphilis mothers, the congenital syphilis infants, the hepatitis B mothers file. Now, the client's profile is for all of the forms, the client screening STI, the client treatment STI, and the partner management and information for the chlamydia and gonorrhea. So the congenital syphilis infants, congenital syphilis mothers are for the congenital syphilis form, and the hepatitis B mother for the hepatitis B. There are many ways you can do this. All you need to do is to make sure that you're not repeating information across different tables, and then that violates the integrity of your data. Because when you update in one place, you need to update everywhere. You don't want to repeat records. So we have this like this, and you're going to find this in your course resource. All the codes will be in your course resource for you to use. And for the purpose of those who have not taken front-end course, again, front-end course is a prerequisite to this course. And so you can choose to take course 1 after this for you to understand how to build your front end. Or if you just want to specialize in back end, then you can move forward to course 3 for you to be able to finalize or specialize in your back end development, where you now begin to build for production and learn all the production level way of developing your system. But you need to understand this deeply to be able to move to a more advanced complexity. When we look at profile.html file, I use JavaScript and CSS here, and I have created this in advance because this is not part of the scope of this course, but we need to have a front end for us to be able to test what we are doing. Now, my JavaScript and my CSS file is responsible for all of the tabs that we have, and what I did is within each of the tab, I have put something to do all of this. We are going to work on this in the next lesson, where we look at the different routes that we're creating here to handle each of these forms when we try to update the values for the form. Now let's go back to the app file. For us to delete the table, we want to do something, and we want to do this on the register client route or endpoint. When we register a client, I don't want to insert records only in the client profile table. I want to insert in all the tables, thereby creating the forms with the unique ID. All I need to insert is the created by, created at, updated by, and the unique ID, so that the forms are there for the user to be retrieved, and then we now do an update once we retrieve. So create account, retrieve, and update all of the values. For this course, we are just going to update and overwrite information. We are not going to go to the advanced level of keeping copies of all of what we have changed, like a log of all we have changed, and so we can have several copies of the client record. And we need to have several copies in real life situation so that we can have historic data. So a particular woman can be pregnant 5 times and have 5 different pregnancy records on the system. You don't want to override previous pregnancy when there's a new pregnancy with the information for the testing and the exposed infant information. You want to have new records. And so these are the kind of things that you learn in course 3 or in the advanced part, where you look at specifications, and you can understand specifications now because you understand exactly what it is talking about, because you have the foundational knowledge that you need to understand all of the advanced level of production ready kind of project. So what we do here is to just do more execute statements. I'm doing this as a trial, so we are going to try this, make mistakes, correct them. I want you to be able to see the kind of problems that you will face. So because of this, we want to make sure that every other field that is not any of these 5 fields are optional in the model, so that we don't have issues with having error messages for providing default values for all of these. So let's go to our database, and I think it's just easier for me to drop the database and recreate it. So I'll say drop database, STI data, and then let me recreate it now. And it's UTF-8 Unicode CI, we use it before. Apply, close. So I have it now. I am going to stop this run, and I'm going to restart it. So now that I have it running, I will go to my page and I will log out, and then I'll try to register a new user because I've wiped out everything. So let's say username admin and register a new user. Now I can log in. So the validation messages, the error messages, and all of those layers are things that we do production level when we test exhaustively. We write tests, and then we look for the different level of validations and use cases and modify our system to eliminate any bug of potential problems. Right now, we've done everything in intermediate level. It's a little above basic, but it guides you to understand how higher you can go. So this knowledge is an incremental knowledge. You can't understand it all in one day, and you can't start advanced. You will get lost. So we can now create a client. Let's see if we can create a client and if the model and the route that I created works. And if it doesn't work, we'll go back to modify. So let's say a client ID here is, let's say client 123, and let's give the first name J, the middle name Agnes, the last name Doe, the date of birth. Let's say Jane was born in, we'll just randomly select any year, 1996, January 2nd, and then the country of birth, I'll say Algeria. Let's say she's female, she's, let's say single, let's say she's a student, and she identifies as a female. Sexual orientation is, let's say bisexual. Her phone number, we'll put anything random. Address line 1, let's say Success Street, and the city is Happy City, and let's say the state is Heavenly State, and the zip code is 111, and the country is, let's say Algeria. Email address is jane.doe@me.com. Let's put the ethnicity here to be, let's say Latin America, and the race is, let's say Latin. Now we've entered this information. Let's click on register client, moment of truth. So we have errors. The first error we have here is unknown column F in field list. So when we say insert into client screening STI, and that is where the error is. So we'll go back to our app file, and I'm just showing you how to read this. So we have this column F. This F was a mistake that was here. So I made the same mistake here when I needed to use this was a mistake that copied and pasted all over. So we save this, we go back and refresh, moment of truth again, and we still have column count doesn't match value count at row 1, and which is client screening STI. We said created by created at unique ID, and then we did not put the same thing. Here we have created by created at, we did not use updated at, updated by. So I hope you're taking note of this, because a number of you always calls without reading your error messages, which are usually straightforward. So these are the kind of things that you want to look at, and look at the error and read exactly what the error is about. So we have programming error now. It's no longer data error. Unknown column updated by in field list, and this is for the client screening STI. There is no updated by column in the client screening STI. So let's go to the client screening STI table, and the table is client screening STI columns. There is an updated by column here, but it's saying there is none. So maybe it's a typographical error. It's updated by and not updated by. So this is how you easily find out your errors, by reading the error messages like that. We're going to have error with the next one here that doesn't have the updated at and updated by. The string is, we don't even need to use update here, but I'm just using it. So let's put it here. So we have this here, updated at, updated by. Here we have updated at, updated by. And here we have updated at, updated by. And I'll do the same thing here, updated at, updated by. So I'll come here, refresh, and let's look again. So we have database error now. Field diagnosis doesn't have a default value, because if we go to client screening STI, we might have made diagnosis not to have optional field. This is the kind of error, and I wanted you to see this, that you will get if you don't have a default value and it's not an optional field. So let's go to client screening STI and see if we need to put default values for all. So we have client screening STI here, and we have, where is the diagnosis field? Diagnosis. You see there's no optional, and so this is the error. So either we have a default value here, we put a default equal to null so that it inserts null there, or we just make it an optional field so that it doesn't tell us that. In real world situation, what you are going to do is to mark out what should be required and what should be optional, and do your validation based on that. We're just learning this, and I'm putting all of this for you to be able to read the different kind of errors. We have programming, we have database error, we have data errors, and these are pretty much the kind of errors you encounter trying to insert records. So we still have the error here, and the reason is this. At this point now, we have changed the model, but the one we have in the MySQL still is the diagnosis that doesn't have a default value and doesn't specify that it is optional. So what do? We can decide to say we want to drop this table and recreate this table, client screening STI. So let me drop the table. So in real world situation, we're not going to get to this point where we drop things. That's why there's a development and there's a testing. In real world, you don't drop, we alter table and create things. So this is the fastest method, instead of writing an alter table command to modify the column. So I'll drop that table, drop table, client screening STI. I didn't select the database to use. I'll say use STI data like that. So take note of these errors, and that is the purpose of this lesson, for you to understand this stuff. So when I come back here and let's say save this again, it recreates the model. I come here to refresh. It should work now. So we have a programming error now, which says we have an error in the SQL syntax. And what we have the error is the right near unique ID insert into congenital syphilis infant, and that is where we have the error. There's no comma between updated by and unique ID. I will tell you, you will always make these mistakes, and you want to be able to debug. So this video should be your best video so far, so you can look at all of this. Congenital syphilis infant, and we're going to the app file, and we're looking at congenital syphilis infant, and we don't have a comma here. So I'm showing you how to read your error messages and debug. So we have another programming error which says unknown column unique ID in field list, which is congenital syphilis infant. What do we have here? The column we have is unique ID, infant unique ID. Let's see, congenital syphilis infant. I want to see the tables. Okay, so we'll look at the columns, and we have infant unique ID. We do not have a unique ID column. So we come here and we want to change that congenital syphilis infant from unique ID to infant. So this must match your column names. So when I come here, we're going to see all the errors we have one by one until we get to the end of the file. We have integrity error. An integrity error here we have is cannot add or update, and this is a foreign key kind of error. Cannot add or update a child row, a foreign key constraint fails, STI data.congenital syphilis infant. So let's look at where we did, because we made it a foreign key to the order. So in the model here, when we have the congenital syphilis mother, we had the unique ID of the mother, and then we have the infant unique ID here. So we have congenital syphilis mothers dot infant unique ID is what we have as the foreign key, and we have an update cascade, on delete cascade. The string here is 64, and it's optional here, which shouldn't be optional. It should be required. And here the infant unique ID is optional, string is 64, unique is true. So let's see 64. Now this is going to fail, not only because of the optional, but because we have congenital syphilis mothers here, and we are not inserting into this unique ID, infant unique ID yet. And because we're not inserting anything here, this particular infant unique ID doesn't find a value here to be attached to. And so the integrity is violated. This must have a unique ID for the infant when we're creating it. So the only thing we can do now is to come to the congenital syphilis mother on the app file and look at this and try to insert something in the infant unique ID. Let it be equal to the unique ID, and then we will edit it with the unique ID of the mother. So say unique ID, infant unique ID, and then what we want to do with the infant unique ID is to say something like the unique ID of the mom plus, let's say 001 or something. Let's just add something that we can edit. So it's going to be unique ID, and we want to concatenate, let's say dot, we can concatenate this. I want to add something to it plus infant, something like this. Unique ID, infant, something like this. And let's see if this works. I'll go back to my models. It won't affect it anyway because I'm not recreating it, but I'll come here and I'll refresh. And because we have already inserted into the other tables before this, I might need to drop that table that we have. So I want to drop congenital syphilis mother so that we can recreate it with the unique ID. And I'll drop the one for infant. So this is the best way to debug your stuff. So I've dropped them. Let's say drop congenital syphilis infant. So I have to drop infant before mother because of the foreign key check. Yeah. So once there's a foreign key, the child has to go before the parent goes. So I've done this. I'll come back here. I'll refresh, and then I have a programming error here now. We say table STI data congenital syphilis infant does not exist because I have not come here to recreate it. So I'll just do something save so you can recreate, and then I'll refresh, and then we have it. So we'll now have integrity error still telling us the same thing as cannot add or update a child row, a foreign key constraint fails, and infant unique ID references congenital syphilis mother infant unique ID on delete cascade. And why this is failing is it has all of the data that we're inserting, but it's failing here. Let's look at it back at the app file. So we have congenital syphilis mother should insert that, and congenital syphilis infant has infant unique ID, and we inserted unique ID into the infant unique ID. So it's going to be unique ID plus infant. So it's not complete here, so that will still fail. So let's see. So for me to get to this now, I'm going to drop the tables again, and I'm going to try to come back here and just make a save so that it can refresh, and we'll see if we get past this integrity error. Now we've passed that. We're now on programming error, and this said insert into congenital syphilis infant, and this is because of the quotation here. Now I'm not supposed to put a quote here because I'm closing quotes at the end there, so this is where the error is. So I'll come and refresh again, and we'll keep doing this until we get it. So we have another integrity error, and it's still about the infant page, and it's saying client 123 plus infant. So now it's getting this plus infant, and in the mother's page, let's even look at what it inserted here. Let's say select all from congenital syphilis mother, and let's see what it has inserted here. So it hasn't inserted anything here yet. Let's see whether it has inserted in client. Okay, no, it's not going to insert anything because it has to commit at the end of it all. I don't want to commit at the end of each one. I committed at the end of everything. So I'm wondering if I want to commit each one so that it can be there for others to work on. But one of the things I can realize might be our problem is we have to insert into the parent before we insert into the client. What we have here as our database is congenital syphilis mothers. What I have here is congenital syphilis mother and not mothers. We are inserting into the child before the parent, which will not work. We have to insert into the parent before the child. So I'll cut here and I will paste here. So this is one of the problems that we have been having, and let's see if this solves it. So debugging will be one of your greatest nightmares. I want you to be able to read all of these errors to see exactly where the error is coming from. So the programming error we have now is from hepatitis B mother. So we've passed all of those problems and we're getting to the last table. We didn't have a comma between updated by and unique ID here. So that's the error. So with experience, you'll be able to spot your errors before you even start like this. And so once we get past this, the table should now work because we're on the last table, all the data inserted. So we have another one, programming error. We say that you have an error in your syntax. Check the manual that corresponds. We have all the data passing in, and this is for the partner management. Let's go back to the partner management and see what we did here. So the partner management here is, we have created by, updated by, unique ID. This did not close the curly brace or the parentheses. I didn't close the parentheses. So I'll save this and see if this was the error, and then refresh. I still have another programming error which says that partner management does not exist. So let's look at our model to see why partner management does not exist. We have something called partner management, and let's look at it. So we have partner management STI, and so we're going to come back here to change the table name partner management STI. So these are the kind of errors we face, and I left some of them deliberate. Some of them were just not deliberate, but they are good. They come up for us to use them for debugging. So we have that, and then when I refresh, we'll see what's the next. Everything is inserted. It has gone successfully. So without any error message, let's see if we can select and see records. Now we have record inserted here into the table. So for every data or for every table, let's check if everything is inserted, and we have all our records inserted in every table once we try to create a client profile. So our client profile is client 123, and we are going to try to retrieve that now. And so let me say client 123, and when I retrieve the record, I have the information that I filled in here. So I have to edit my form to make sure the date of birth stays in the field. All the information that I selected and checks in, so we can easily do this and update them. In the next lesson, we are going to create the chlamydia and gonorrhea form for update, the hepatitis B, and we are going to change this congenital syphilis form to pull from the database to fill in just the unique ID and any information that is already present in the database, like the infant unique ID and the date of birth was already present, or if it's already present. If not, we'll do that and put an update button. Now let me show you how the personal profile was created before we end this lesson. When we come to the profile.html file, so when we register the client into the system, the route that we use to register a client is the register client route that we use. And once it is successful, we redirect to the home page with a message. And if it's not successful, we want it to render the home.html. On the home.html file, we have our forms that we have created, and these are the two forms that we have. The page was split into two columns. The first column of the page holds the form that has the registration form for a client, where we register a client. What I did was copy over this form into the profile file and change all of the placeholders to use value attributes. Now, when you use value, you're going to get the value from the database. Value is equal to, and then we use this expression from Ginger. How do we get this expression from Ginger? When you go to your app file and we create the client, I want to show you how we get that. When we create the client, we use the client variable to fetch that record. When we select all from client profile, where unique ID is the unique ID we entered, we get that value here as client. Because we've gotten that value and it's held in the client variable, we are going to pass this on the final to the profile page. So if we retrieve the record, when we come to retrieving the information, retrieve client, we look at where we hold this in the client, where we fetch the result in the client. And when we say we want to render the template, profile.html, we pass the variable client there. And so once we get to the profile page, when we use client dot the name of the column that we want to get, so unique ID column, client unique ID, first name column, client dot first name. So it's going to be whatever name we pass here. If the name of this variable was something like patient, so this will be equal to patient equal to patient, or whatever you want to put here, and you pass this to the view, which is the profile.html file. So this is how we pass it. The same way we pass the message there to this URL. And so this is how we did that. And so in preparation for next week's lesson, I'm going to create all of the forms in advance, and you're going to have access to the source code so that you will see what we did. Recall again that this is not a front-end course, and so most of JavaScript and CSS are done behind the scene, but you have access to the code. And if you are interested in knowing exactly how those were done, you want to take course 1 or take the future advanced front-end courses that we have coming up next year. And if you want to go advanced in production level development for Python or backend development, you take course 3 coming up next year. So thank you and see you next week.